Hey everybody, this is Kathleen Moss, and you're listening to A Breast Cancer Diary. My guest today is Tina Conrad. She's a senior planner at Carhartt, as well as the host of DJ Breast Cancer, another podcast, and she lives in Leesburg, Florida. Her breast cancer was stage 3A. It was ER/PR positive and HER2 negative. She had both ductal and lobular breast cancer. And like me, she has a mom who has been a breast cancer survivor as well and has gone through that as a long-term survivor. Both of them have had at least 11 years in Tina's case, and her mom even more years since any kind of recurrence. And I just wanted to talk to Tina today about what it's been like, because I was telling her I don't know anyone in my life in the breast cancer community here on the West Coast who's been strongly entrenched in the corporate business world and who stayed there throughout their breast cancer story. And she is someone who managed to do that. So I'm kind of in awe of her. I found Tina through the Wildfire Breast Cancer writing community, and she's a fellow writer there. And I've heard her story mostly through her podcast, and she was sweet to offer me a little bit of advice and a mentoring session when I was thinking about doing my podcast. So we know each other a little bit, but welcome, Tina, and please tell us about your journey and how breast cancer entered your life in that corporate business world. What was your role at that time, and how did it affect you? How did you exit and re-enter? What was that all like for you?
Yes. Well, first, let me say hello, Kathleen. It's so good. So good to be here. I've taken a little pause, or a long pause. It's been a few years since I've done any recording, but it's just so great to be back and be a guest, and no one else I'd rather be a guest with. So yeah, back to 2013 when I was diagnosed. I was a DMM, which is divisional merchandise manager, at a large retail outlet. It was truly like my dream job, like where I aspired to be, and I had a whole team of people, and I was just recently married, and like life felt really, really awesome, like where I just planned to be. And then, I just stopped one day and kind of took notice of my health, because someone actually on my team had a health scare, not breast cancer related, but just had a health scare. And I was like, like this breast of mine, like the nipples sunken in, something doesn't look right. And, I kind of ignored it like for a few months, which is kind of, I don't know. I was very much an advocate for breast health. I had gotten a mammogram when I was 30, when I was 33, because of my mom, I was very, into all of that. But she had always had like a lump. And so this was like totally, something different. And so having this health scare with someone on my team, I was like, I'm just going to go get this checked out. And, it was a mammogram, and then, they call you back, and, you can just kind of sense and read the room that like things aren't really normal. They weren't like the other times I'd had a mammogram. And so, that led to like an ultrasound and then a biopsy. And I woke up from the biopsy, and basically the doctor said, get your mom's records. That was the first thing I remember her saying to me. And so, it was just very foreboding. So like I knew things weren't going well. So ultimately, yes, I received the diagnosis that, I had breast cancer, and it was pretty advanced, stage 3A, lymph node activity. I had 15 lymph nodes taken out. I did opt to get the double mastectomy just with my mom's history. And then ultimately I did find out too, I had lobular, which can easily, often jump, to the other breast too. So I felt very good in my decision, that I had made, given my, my family history and everything that had happened, but I was busy. Like I worked, a lot of hours. I tried to plan my chemo around like the least intrusive time for work. I was still just very, very career focused, and everything changed, like everything changed. I I had never even taken, more than maybe 1 week's time off, in a row, in my whole career. So, with this cancer diagnosis, with surgery, I took several weeks off. Then with chemo, you get yourself worse and worse. Like the more you go on it, it's just harder. It's harder on your body to recover. And there was one night, like I woke up and it came following my oncologist was really great, really talked to me just like a human being. And he said, who's your advocate at work? And I was like, well, my boss, she looks out for me. She does. He's like, no, 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 no. I'm not talking about your boss. I'm not talking about that. He's like, who is your advocate? And I was like, well, I don't have one. He's like, well, then I seriously need you to consider taking a leave of absence. And I think he was just so black and white in that moment that I needed. And, so that was kind of my first taking a step back from work, and focusing on myself and, putting my health first, because I had always put my career first, so like that just was who I was. So that kind of started, everything. And I've definitely changed just in my attitude and viewpoint to work. I still have remained within the corporate world, but I'm no longer like leading big teams, and I'm happy, and I just have a different viewpoint, I think, on life and what is my priorities, and that's okay, and it's not to say if someone listening there, keeps going down a path of career, that's great too, but I feel that, you do have to put your health first, and you're doing it not only for you, but the people that you love. And that just became a different priority through this whole process. So I was working with Sears Holdings, which was like Kmart Sears. Obviously, they're no longer no longer in business at the time of my diagnosis, and it was about 2 years that I had worked there. That I just really had a calling that like my work had to mean more to me. And Vera Bradley had a foundation that specialized in breast cancer. And so that was really important to me. And we had so many great opportunities. I saw the foundation, like where they do the research. It was so fascinating. Just all the trials that they were doing. So I was really embedded, not only within Vera Bradley, but, I did a lot of volunteer work with the foundation. So I worked there for nearly 9 years. And then I just, recently felt a need and a calling to do, again, something different. And so I've been in either merchandising or inventory about, half of my career each. And, now I have a position that allows me to be remote. I've recently moved. And I get a little bit more in the details of like the work and inventory. I don't, want to sound too much like a nerd, but like I love Excel. I love it. So it kind of gives me a little bit more different purpose. And I'm just really enjoying it. So it's just been good for me in terms of like a work-life balance.
At the time of your double mastectomy, how was it going back into the workplace with a new body or a changed body? How was your experience of that change in that corporate setting?
I think it was less about, like the breast side of it. It was more the hair, like the hair is a big deal. So coming back, I took my leave, after I'd had my mastectomy. I had been through like 12 rounds of chemo. And so my hair was just starting to come back. And it was just like that peach fuzz, real tiny, hair. And I remember going to a store to work on some kind of project that we were doing. And a customer came up to me and she was like, I really love your hair. And it was just like such a sweet moment that like, you never know what a compliment can mean to you. But that in that moment, I know what a compliment meant to me, and I could have gone into like, oh, I just had cancer. Oh, this, oh, that, oh, really? It looks crazy, but I was just like, I stopped and I looked at her and I was like, thank you so much, and it just was really, I didn't have to be a cancer patient in that moment. I was just me with short, growing hair. And it was, just a beautiful thing. But it was, in general, it was a hard transition, like it's kind of like, like your badge of honor, like you're so vulnerable coming back. I've written about it within Wildfire too, because I definitely had a boss when I came back to work at Sears. We had just come from some meeting and I'd only been back a few weeks, and it was just her and I walking, and she was like, now that you're back in the saddle, I really need you to step it up. And it was some of the harshest words I've ever heard, in my entire life, because I thought I was so prepared, and I had really come back and done everything I could do, to retrain my brain, to like study these notes, to be a student again. And like, cause I was out for 3 months, with a leave. So it's difficult to get quote unquote back in the saddle again. It's no easy feat. So I just realized in that moment, I can't work for someone that can't acknowledge, she had been kind to me like on other occasions, but like now that I'm coming back, you can't be kind. So it just put things in much more black and white than like I had kind of experienced before in my life. So I went to go work for someone who had like a history of cancer in their own family, and could acknowledge, me as a worker, but also me as a human being. And like, that was very important to me. And I think it's, no matter what people are going through in their lives, it doesn't just have to be cancer. It can be any kind of health or mental or any kind of, issue. I think it's just important to, to be empathetic and to understand, you might not know all of the details, but I think we have to be kind and like allow people the space, that they need to heal, and to be understanding when people need time away from work. That definitely changed within me, within that experience, to then share it with other people and to always, give people more the benefit of the doubt, because work will always be there, but the relationships and the kindness and the way you make people feel, it's just very important. And something that will always, go beyond you, even your time on this earth, is like how you make people feel.
You mentioned needing an advocate when you were first diagnosed, and it sounds like you did find that. Where did that advocacy come from, and how was that powerful in your life?
Yeah, I love sharing and like helping other women, through difficult situations. I saw that within my mom. She's not so much on a global scale, but she would take a woman aside and say like, "Oh, you're not sure what a double mastectomy looks like? I'll show you." And she'd take them to the bathroom and show, and she was just very kind, to people who needed maybe, just a kind word or a moment. And so I think giving back was always very important to me. And I feel like, there's so many things we can do, boots on the ground, to help women, but also research is so important. So first and foremost, I always want to know, like we're just coming off of October when we're recording this, but like, where's the money going to that helps women, not just only for the short term. Women do need help, like obviously too, within a diagnosis, but what can we do to help the next generation not experience what we did, whether it be through vaccines, whether it be through new trials, metastatic breast cancer. There's clearly so many things that we need to help others with. And so that's very important to me. And so it was not enough for me to just, walk away from the community. I felt like I needed a way to give back. And so, whether it was speaking at various events, whether it was starting up a podcast, it was just, very important for me to help other women, and then to, to support them through whatever they're going through.
Well, thank you for doing that. It definitely impacted me in a good way.
Oh, good. Thank you.
How was your mom's openness about her mastectomy and the way her body looked after mastectomy? How did that inform your experience going into mastectomy?
I think it was very important. She was very transparent with me. Clearly she believed, because she was told by a doctor, oh, just get the lumpectomy, you're young, this will all be fine. And then it came back, almost in the same location 3 years later. So for us, it was very important, that she shared that experience. She wanted the best for me. She wanted to do the most, that would give me the most longevity of life. And so, she was very much an advocate for me to do as much as possible, obviously to be as vigilant, to that. And the way that I think my dad loved her through it is I also feel like the way my husband loved me through it, which is to make a woman just feel beautiful in the body that they're in. And so I feel very blessed, to have a husband that loves me and told me every day of my cancer, whether I had no hair, whether, I was in the bathroom, like whether I had, this crazy bra on, like I just felt loved through it. And I feel like it's very important, to surround yourself with that kind of love, of whatever kind of support that looks like for you, but find people who will love you through it. Because you are beautiful each and every day of your journey. And so I think it's just important that you feel that and find people that tell you that as well.
Did your mom have reconstruction of any sort?
She did. Yes, she did. And I mean, she looks great. Like, she's doing great. Just went to a softball game of hers today. She's 69 years old and she's out there, playing women's softball, which is pretty amazing, So, just to see her and living her best life, and it's great. So I think that she's such an inspiration to me each and every day of, one, continuing to take care, be active, but also, help other women and, love them through it.
Mm-hmm.
So
was her experience having reconstruction probably informed your level of confidence going forward into reconstruction too?
Yes, definitely.
So did you get implants?
I did. Yes.
And you're 11 years out. So have you thought about getting your implants replaced, or have you gotten them replaced?
I have not. It is on my radar to talk about. Actually, I have all new doctors because I'm in Florida. So I think that will probably be a consideration. My mom still has her original ones too. So, but yeah, just I want to be transparent, have those, I want to ask more questions, I think that's what's maybe great about our generation and below is we ask the questions, we probe a little bit more. Maybe we're a little skeptical, but that's fine. That just means you're taking your own health into your hands. And I think that that's important. So yeah, I want to do what's best for me. I don't know. I don't feel like I have to have implants all of my life. I would be fine with another route too. So I just want to do what obviously gives me the healthiest outlook on life in general.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I've met a few people locally who are in that spot where they're 10 years out and they have been told in the past that their implants would last 10 years. And they're just in that quandary of I don't know, should I get them replaced? And do I want to go through all that again? And it's an interesting little crossroads to reach, especially as you're aging. This person in particular that I'm thinking of is quite a bit older than me. And she's I don't have use for them anymore. So maybe it's not worth the trouble. So interesting to think about all of those choices that we continue to have in this story.
Yeah. Never, it kind of goes away, but it never goes away, So yeah. You never know.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about your spiritual life. Your podcast has a really clear kind of progression into more and more talk of spirituality, and especially within the Christian tradition. And I know that your spirituality, your beliefs, and your faith have really informed the way that you look at your breast cancer experience. And so I wanted to ask you about a scripture passage that you feel is central to your story and has given meaning to your breast cancer experience.
Yes, it's in Luke chapter 8. Well, actually, just to set it up a little bit, I had a kind of a pain in my arm. And so I had gone in to get some scans done. And then I was awaiting the results because everything seems, to take forever. And I had met my cousins and we had come from a very Catholic, very religious upbringing. So to kind of meet them and spend time with them was kind of very fitting. And there was just a beautiful church in this town of, we were in Covington, Kentucky. It was very near Cincinnati. But anyway, my one cousin and I decided to go to mass and like, go in into this just beautiful, gorgeous church. And so we sit down and, I did want, time to kind of reflect and pray because of, everything that was going on in my life. And I heard this verse, like this was like literally the only like one of the Bible things that they read, but they talked about the woman who touches the cloak of Jesus. And and it says, but Jesus said, someone has touched me, for I perceive that the power has gone from me. And when the woman saw that she was not hidden, she came trembling and falling down before him, declared in the presence of all the people why she had touched him and how she had been immediately healed. And he said to her, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. And this was like the passage that they read. And my cousin just, turned to me and she said, well, if that's not a sign, I don't know what it is. And so we kind of had a moment, just in church too. And so it was very special. And obviously the results came back and they were good. But I have felt throughout my entire journey, God's hand in all of it. And, even like leading up to my diagnosis, I saw the most beautiful rainbow I'd ever witnessed. And it was just this immediate sense of peace came over me. And it was feeling like, it didn't even matter what it was, right or wrong or good or bad or, positive, negative, all that thing. But like God was in control and it was okay. And it was just this peace that like, I can't really describe other than like I just felt, this overwhelming sense of peace. And so that was kind of like the start of my journey. And then obviously I did get, the news that I had breast cancer, but I've always felt that God's put me on this path to help other women, to be a light, for others and to share like his love. And for me, it felt not like a punishment. And there were times where I was like, are you punishing me? Like I did ask the questions. I did, wonder aloud, but I felt going through it, it felt more like an invitation because I hadn't been as close, to God, up until that point. I've been very career focused, very, very focused on things that like to me mattered at the time. And I think it kind of turned my whole world upside down with cancer, but it was also, it shined a light on many beautiful aspects and faith was definitely one of them. And so just to hear this passage, in this church, in this beautiful setting, it just kind of made it all feel like it came full circle.
Yeah, I can relate to the massive gifts of peace that descend on us in the most unlikely times. And
Yes.
without even asking for it, without even knowing that it's possible, of course, because we're so out of touch with the spiritual realm usually. At least I am. And so, yeah, I love that. I love thinking about the spiritual world as a place of gifts instead of a place of guilt or shame, which is so often the case for us. I think we learn when we're younger, about, well, I did. I have to speak for myself. Like, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of judgment in the church. And so I have a lot of injuries around that. And I think that it's common to feel extra vulnerable as a breast cancer survivor and as a woman in the midst of the common beliefs about if you do right, then God rewards you with good health and with lots of money. It's really common, I think, here in America. And so I feel like it pushes people's buttons to talk about God around health. But at the same time, there's so much of spirituality that can give us so much trust and an ability to live with the uncertainty that we have to make peace with some way or another. There's so much stress involved when you're living in the breast cancer community, when you're not turning your back on it, but actually continuing to be there socially in it.
And I've struggled with many things, through my life. There's, what I would consider people who are just so devout, get a recurrence and get metastatic breast cancer. And it just doesn't seem fair, but I don't think we can think about things. Maybe it's not like this, in this case, this black and white, where I feel like God loves you through all of it, and so, It's just the peace that he provides, through it. And so like that was kind of hard. I had a friend, that had lost a son who was 4 years old. And I was really in those days, like struggling with my faith. Like, why, God, would you do this, to this, young child and to this family? And it really hurt me. And, I was just out walking and just kind of asking these questions, like to God, on my walk. And it's hard to, like, it was just crazy. But this frog just came out of nowhere and started jumping and like just being ridiculous, almost to the point where it made me smile and laugh. And I talked to my brother, who was like really close friends with this family. He's like, that son loved frogs. Like, he just loved frogs. And so like to just put a little bit of levity on like a really tough situation, I feel like is only something, like, I can't explain that. Like, it has to be, like something greater than this world. And I've just had so many breast cancer sisters, that I've lost. And it always seems like it's like 3 days later, I'll see a feather or something that's really reminiscent of like what they meant to me. And so it's also given me peace, that they are someplace where there's, a message, or there's a sign, or there's a bit of love or something, that will help me through a hard time. And so that, I guess, is what my faith means to me, is just this sense of peace, even in really difficult times. And again, I don't know that it always has to be like four walls of a church, but it's just this relationship, and invitation that God, I felt cancer provided to me, that has helped me through so many experiences, not just cancer, but, throughout the past 11 years. It's just been a relationship with God.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm happy to hear you tell that story. It makes me happy. I know it's tricky stuff, and every single one of us has a different story to tell with regard to our faith. And some people just get really triggered and really angry about it. But I'm happy to be able to provide a platform for all of those different stories to be told, and mostly just to hold it in mystery, because as I get older, I realize how little I know and how little I can know. And it's nice to believe that someday we will understand much more than we do now.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we'll go, we're all broken here on this earth, I feel. And I feel like there's a place where there's just true love, and, I have not had kids, but I can only imagine like how a parent loves a child. Like, I do feel like that's how God loves me, is unconditionally, no matter my faults, no matter what I do, that I feel like his love, is always there. And so I think to go, in my mind as a Christian, I feel like to go to a place where there is just pure love, like that gives me hope, each and every day.
Yeah, definitely. There is a spiritual aspect to the community of sisterhood that we're a part of that I still haven't been able to put words to, but it is really powerful. It is the idea of solidarity of any sort, coming through a struggle of any sort together with a common understanding, side by side, shoulder to shoulder. There's nothing else like it that I've ever experienced, and it is truly spiritual. Is that part of your story in terms of like how you created your podcast? I feel like that's why I created my podcast, was to transmit some of that out into the airways.
Yes, like the sisterhood, like it's amazing. I've met such amazing friends. I've vacationed even with, people who are breast cancer survivors. So like it runs deep, like it's really amazing. Even when I started my podcast, I met a great friend, Jen, who lives in New York. We've become, not only like Instagram friends, but like in real life friends. So I think it's the sisterhood it's just amazing. Like it's like nothing you've ever experienced. And to have that podcast that I had, to have others share their story and to watch their load just lighten. Because for many people, it's the first time they were sharing their story, like on a public stage, and so to see that lightening was such a gift, for me, to help, provide something where they could share and they could talk about it, and they could feel lighter and freer. And then, to build this library of women. And then, I know other women's that like are just going through it now, and to be able to say like, hey, I'm here whenever you need to talk. But there's also this like library of women sharing their stories, in various episodes that you can listen to at whenever is convenient for you, and I do have a lot of people that will go through, each and every episode, or ones that sound interesting to them, or are facing something that they're facing, which is what you're doing too, is building this like amazing library of voices and stories and, hope, and we can all connect with them in some way or manner. And so I think that that's what's such a gift, is to share that light and that love, with others, and to see that support like in action is really important.
Yeah, definitely. I want to talk a little bit about your podcast so people know where to find it. It's called DJ Breast Cancer, and you have 100 episodes now. So a big library that folks can just binge right through. And like you said, it is mostly women telling the particular part of their story that centers around their diagnosis and how they dealt with that in the aftermath. It's a powerful podcast, and it's such a great contribution to the breast cancer community. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Yes, the first season was my story, and then I started to share other stories. And for a time, I was very scared to share metastatic breast cancer survivors. I just felt like it wasn't my voice to be shared. But I really had met an amazing podcaster, Emily Garnett, who just touched me in my heart in so many ways. And I just felt like, she died in March of 2020. So right as COVID was like starting, she didn't die, related to COVID. She died, due to breast cancer. But I just wanted to share their voices. And she was just very much an advocate of how can we build a bridge between early, stages and late stages if we don't talk, And so I just wanted to do something to honor her. And so, I did devote a whole season to metastatic breast cancer. And, and it's very disheartening because many of those guests are no longer with us, and that was, just, several years ago. And I think that's what keeps me up at night and makes me want to do more, makes me want to drive research, because we need more time, we need more options, we need more choices, we need more trials. Like all of that is so very important to me, so that we can honor those women and do more for them. Like it's not enough. And so we have to keep pushing the science forward.
Yeah. Is Emily's podcast still available to listen to?
I haven't tried lately. I felt like many things kind of had started coming down, but it was called The Intersection of Cancer and Life. And she's just an amazing woman. Like I know if you search her, you can find her, but she's just she's such an amazing powerhouse. And I just, I loved her in every way. And I just want to do more, like for her and her name, in terms of research. Like I feel like there's so much more that can be done.
As we wrap up, I just want to ask you what I often ask my guests if we have time at the end of each interview, which is, what would you tell a newly diagnosed patient that you wish someone had told you?
Actually, this is something that someone did tell me, and it was very helpful, which is kind of create like a central communication hub. Like it's very exhausting to try to keep up. Like, oh, did I text that person? Did I text this one? Did I email? All of this. So my aunt had told me like start a blog, like, or a Caring Bridge kind of site. Like they have a free great site, but it's just a place where everyone can have a way, to access your information, and it doesn't exhaust you. Like cancer is exhausting enough versus like worrying if everyone's like keeping up. Like you have a place, they can go to it, they can find your daily or however much you want to update. And I think through that, like writing became so important to me. And I encourage everyone to write. There's so many feelings you're going to go through. And I think it's just important to write them out. It doesn't mean you have to share it. Like, I know we're both very much advocates of wildfire, contributing, and I encourage you to contribute and to do all of that. But if you're scared or you're angry and you want to burn it, like, go ahead and burn it. I don't really care. I just think that there's something so powerful about releasing a lot of that feelings and emotions. So there's kind of a practical sense of like sharing your, updates with everyone so it's not exhausting you. But then there's just this beautiful part that comes with it, which is writing. And for me, it was poetry and rediscovering this love of poetry. I used to write poems when I was like in high school. And I just kind of rediscovered it, and it just, it's just a great way to get in touch with your feelings. And for me, it's almost then like I have more control over my feelings because I don't let them have control over me. And so it's this relationship of kind of give and take. And I'm like, okay, I'll sit with you for a day or two because this is really bothering me. It's triggering me in some way, but I'm going to write it down and like, what is it? Like, what is really bothering me about this? And so I try to definitely write it out. I keep a lot of journals, a lot of notes on my phone. You can just write it on a scrap piece of paper. It doesn't matter. But I think that writing is just so therapeutic. It's just very, very helpful. And I encourage anyone, again, you don't have to publish something or be, this, grandiose thing, but it's just very, very powerful to have it and to even reflect back on things that you wrote from years past. So I'm 11 years out, and to see things that how raw it was, when I was going through it, it's good sometimes to like kind of check back in with yourself and see how far you've come. And that's great too.
Yeah. The reason this podcast is called A Breast Cancer Diary is that I started a diary, video vlogging diary on Instagram and called it that. And that was the most healing part of my whole process. I needed a lot of healing. I was really angry. I didn't like the way that my surgeries turned out and the way that I was being guided by my oncologist initially. So I'm a huge advocate for writing things out or speaking things out. And just recently, I got a brand new appreciation for CaringBridge, which I hadn't really experienced very much. But I had a friend with metastatic cancer. She was in the breast cancer community because she was a previvor when I met her, and had prophylactic mastectomy. But she ended up succumbing to a different type of cancer just this year in October. And she had been writing really regularly on CaringBridge. And I was supposed to meet up with her in October, just a few days after she died. And I had lost touch with her, and I assumed that she probably had passed, and was just really longing to connect with her and hear about that last period. And I could go back and read her entries on CaringBridge and feel like I was connecting with her and her family through that. So that was a huge gift from her to me as her friend, just to have that closure. So I'm a huge fan of that technology now. And it's wonderful that it is free.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and it's a great gift, to your point, that just helps so many, like it helps people through it and process their feelings too. I think people can comment, so it's a great way for everyone to stay connected in this day and age.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned your poetry, because I know you're contributing a book of poetry to my raffle giveaway that's going on now for the opening of season 2. I'm offering for folks that are willing to send me a screenshot of your rating and review of this podcast, enters your name in the raffle to win some Wildfire magazine issues or Tina's poetry, and then some wearable art as well. So be sure and rate and review and send me your screenshot at my email address at kathleenmoss@protonmail.com if you'd like to read some of Tina's poetry. I look forward to sending that out. Yeah, thank you for contributing. All right. Well, I will hope to talk to you again soon, Tina. And I hope that you're settling into your new home really nicely and able to hibernate there this winter, even though you're in Florida.
It's a different life, but it's good. It's really good. So yeah, looking forward to no snow and to more sunshine. So
Good for you. You deserve it.
thank you.
I'll talk to you later.
Thank you.